What's up, everybody? We're going live. It's Tyler with Hooksets Are Free. Hope you guys are having a great night whenever it is that you're watching this video. Could be daytime if you're not watching this on the replay. But regardless, welcome back to the channel. My name is Tyler, and this is Hooksets Are Free. And this is going to be another live stream tonight. It is Friday, April 29th, 2022, about 9:15 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. Hope y'all are doing well. We're just going to do a little late night fishing talk. And I do have a specific topic in mind of what I want to discuss tonight, but we can take this in kind of whatever direction you guys want to take it throughout the live stream. But generally speaking, I wanted to talk about the topic of downsizing your presentation. One, to get more bites, which is obviously kind of the clear reason that you would do so, but two, being that you can oftentimes catch bigger fish. Contrary to popular belief that big baits catch big fish, sometimes small baits will catch big fish. And so I want to go through kind of most bait categories tonight, talk about some of the smaller presentations, some of the specific lures that I like to use in each of those categories. So we'll just kind of run through most of my tackle collection tonight, and I will rattle off a whole bunch of different baits that I'm a big fan of across the board when it comes to smaller presentations, downsizing your bait, regardless of the category that you're in. So Daniel T in the house. What's up, man? How you doing tonight? And we got South Jersey Fisherman. How's it going, Matt? Cheers to you, gentlemen. Hope you're having a good night. Drinking the ever classic Coors Banquet. They got some sort of limited can going on right now. But when I say classic, I mean 1873, homies. Right here in Colorado. Well, thank you very much, Daniel. I appreciate you being part of the notification squad. You know, I did message both of you guys and a few other people on Instagram. I texted Ron Hawley to let him know that I would be in here. I might need to text him again as I did last week because, I'm not sure what's going on with the notifications. But sometimes that is an issue. So, Daniel, Pilsner is one of my favorites as well. I consider this to be as much a lager as it is a Pilsner, although they like to classify it as a Pilsner. But yeah, super easy drinking. You know, as usual, I brought two of them down here just because I drink them kind of fast and they are delicious. So, brewed right here in Golden, Colorado, about 30, not quite 45 minutes away from where I am right now. Would you guys do me a quick favor and let me know how I sound and look right now on the live stream? Is everything checking out okay? Is the audio fine? Is the picture fine? Or am I choppy at all? Just because, I want to ask that up front because it is annoying whenever I double check that on the replay and it's bad quality. And it's not like any of these videos get a tremendous number of views, and that's something to talk about. One, it's not super searchable content, but two, I think YouTube gets a little bit confused by the fact that watch time relative to the length of the video is inevitably going to be down compared to other videos when you look at percentage of time that people are clicking onto the video and then clicking off. So it messes up the algorithm for sure. If you follow Alex Rudd, you would have seen that he talked about that recently and decided to switch his live streams from YouTube over to Twitch, like as of this week. So kind of a strange deal just because he's wanting to hack the algorithm and make sure that the live streams aren't really messing up the growth of his channel. And that got me to thinking a little bit, just because, as I mentioned recently, the growth of my channel has been slow, but I don't want to stop streaming here. This is, super fun for me, and growing my channel is not my number one priority when I've got 3,000 subscribers, but it is a priority. I would not mind seeing my channel grow for sure. So sorry, I'm not trying to whine here or turn anybody off, but it is something to think about. Daniel says loud and clear. Okay, man. Right on. Bruce Nichols, what's up, dude? Yo, yo, yo. Did I text you or send you a message on Instagram or no, Bruce? Or do you just get your notifications? Frank, yo, yo. How's it going, dude? Good to see you in here. Thank you for hopping in. I'm going to give people just another moment or two before we kind of get into this. And I am going to be a little bit all over the place tonight because I did not write down a list ahead of time in terms of smaller baits and specific categories that I wanted to talk about. I'm just going to kind of go through most categories, if you will. Hard baits first and then soft plastics. But to just talk about smaller than normal baits in each category that I like to use, that I think are very high quality baits and catch fish really well. And the general idea or topic that I want to mention is just that most people associate big baits with big fish and small baits with small fish, but I think we all know that that is not necessarily true. Downsizing your presentation can obviously lead to getting more bites because it will attract a larger spectrum of fish. When it comes to the size, you will get more bites from smaller and bigger fish, but you will also get bites from multiple species of fish. But if you didn't catch that, looped into that whole, you'll get more bites by smaller and larger fish, you will still catch big fish on small baits. So that is kind of what I want to talk about tonight. More so than when to throw small baits is just which ones I like to use. It seems a little bit intuitive or common sense that you might go to a smaller bait in, say, a highly pressured body of water when conditions are super tough or really slick calm, or just plain when you're not getting bit, and you've already been fishing for a while. Then it's time to downsize or go to something that is a little bit more multi-species friendly. So Matt says, I think you can still grow doing lives, just probably need more vids a week. Yeah, I totally agree with that. Like maybe doing more tutorial vids about beginner baits. Yeah, I hear you. But, that was part of what Alex Rudd was talking about, is that he's still posting multiple videos every week. Now, they might not all be super searchable. So maybe YouTube is not like pushing out his videos to the masses, or, they're not findable by way of keyword search. And so it's just going through the recommended part of the algorithm that people are randomly finding him, as opposed to stumbling into his video and it jumping to the top of the list because the algorithm likes it and likes him. But he was mentioning that he's been posting regularly, and YouTube catches on to the fact that people click on the video, like what they see, click the like button, watch it for a majority of the time, and then leave upon the completion of the video. And YouTube makes note of that and decides to push out his content to other people or recommend other videos of his to those same viewers. And his channel grows quicker when that's happening, as opposed to when he posts a live stream and it's a longer form video that is an hour or 2 hours, and people are clicking on, watching for 10 minutes, anywhere from, 5 to 20% of the video, as opposed to say 50 to 90% of the video. And that little deal makes a difference in terms of how YouTube perceives the metrics in people's attention and how much they actually care about what they're watching. So, yeah, we'll see. But I'm not going to stop doing lives here on YouTube. So, you guys don't have to worry about that. Megaforce Mark in the house. What's up, man? How you doing? Bruce says, I scored an Unreal deal yesterday. Guggen Finesse with a Corrado DC for 160 bucks. That is a hell of a deal. Where did you get that, man? Sorry, let me turn the brightness up on my monitor here. Sorry about that. That's a deal and a half, Bruce. Nice score. Bassless Chap, Ron Holly, how's it going, man? He says, dang, getting harder and harder to get on here. Hey, y'all. Well, hello to you as well. I'm not sure if it's harder because you can't find me or because it's late at night and you're officially an East Coaster. But I apologize, whatever the reason is, and I appreciate you hopping on here, man. Matt says, yeah, the title is super important. Keywords are important. I agree. Yeah, Daniel, you could be right that Alex hurt his channel a little bit when he started splitting, but he did that for the same reason. And he was actually posting those videos on both of his channels, but it's possible that the algorithm didn't like the fact that he had a live streaming channel specifically. Maybe that hurt both of those channels, but he started that so that he could theoretically stop posting the lives or streaming live on his main channel so as to positively impact the algorithm. But, hey, that's a good question, Ron. Matt, have you posted any videos on your channel recently, man? Tom Mix in the house. Yo, yo. No notification. Well, dude, I don't know what to tell you. That's a real shame. I probably need to be better about posting on my story on Instagram and posting on whatever it's called, the main page on YouTube the day of when I'm gonna go live. What is it called on YouTube? If I just create a post, and say going live, at 9:15 my time, then that probably makes a difference in letting people know that I am going to be on, and then maybe also in turn helps send out notifications. I'm not sure. Matt says I did want to tell you to check out the Daiwa HMKL Steez SP. It's a jerk bait. Okay, yeah, it's kind of cool that Daiwa makes some baits that have the same names as their reels. A little confusing, but kind of cool. He said it's pretty nice looking. Off first look, has swiveling hook hangers on front, and the rear one has a computer board on the front and rear. One has a computer board lip, 137 millimeters. That's a big jerk bait, but interesting that it's got swiveling hook hangers. I like that. Nick Rodriguez. No notification for me either, but still here. Well, I appreciate you, dude. Thank you guys for being in here. Some of you got notifications from me personally. Sounds like none of you guys got notifications in general, and that is a dang shame. Well, Nick says the bell wasn't on. Yeah, turn that on. Maybe it'll make a difference in the future. Frank did get a notification. Okay. Someone's messing with us. I don't know, man. All right. So this week, guys, I caught one measly fish. It wasn't even a great one. Probably a pound and a half or so. Um, might have been yesterday. Yeah, here she is. Nothing special, but nonetheless, did catch a fish, and again, it came on this dude right here, the Yum Scottsboro swim bait. I am digging that so far. Okay, uh, I will show you exactly how I've been rigging it. It's still tied onto my rod right now up in the garage, so I don't have that one exactly, but I'm using the 3.5 inch in the bluegill pattern. This is a great color pattern, by the way, and I'm rigging it on the Owner Flashy Swimmer, specifically in the 3/0 size with the gold Colorado blade. So I'm not going to fully rig this up right now, but I'll show you how well it matches up size-wise. So there she is. Pretty perfect. Comes out about here in the back. And yeah, it's been a pretty sweet rig for me. The other day it probably wasn't perfect, but I didn't have any spare jig heads on me. You know, a round ball jig or something just a little bit more standard of a swim bait jig head. You know, even something like this would have worked really well because I was dealing with relatively slick conditions, which have been really rare for me in the month of April so far. It's been super windy here in Colorado, but I'll tell you that this swim bait is one that I so far am a big fan of. What you'll notice is that it's got a medium amount of kick to it. I This thing has a really impressive action for being an injection mold bait. You know, Scottsboro baits are hand poured, right? And so that was a big reason that they partnered up with Yum, was to create something close to the same recipe that Scottsboro has. One in profile, and two in action. You can see that just how much this thing kicks. And this is a 6-inch bait. This is a 3.5, but you get just about the same amount of tail kick. They did a remarkable job at replicating just how soft these baits are, how well made they are. And, you know, this one is quite a bit more versatile than the original Scottsboros. You know, Scottsboro baits are made to be standalone swim baits, straight up, and they're generally made in bigger sizes, 5, 6, maybe even a few that are bigger than that. But they're super popular among ledge fishermen, and and they've gotten really popular in the last couple of years. So much so that Scottsboro can't quite keep up with the demand for their products. So that is why they partnered up with Yum to create this bait. But if you've noticed, they're also selling these in a kit through Yum that they sell with the Flash Mob Junior. So pretty cool deal where, you know, they'll sell the Flash Mob Junior and a pack of swim baits and jig heads, so that literally you're getting a whole A-rig kit all in one, and ready to rock. And I don't know if you've seen underwater footage of this bait swimming, but it has an awesome action, especially on like a medium speed retrieve. As you start speeding it up, then the tail will, you know, start to roll a little bit. This thing runs true no matter what. It has great action. regardless, but I like it a little bit better on like a true medium speed retrieve. You know, I don't think it's a crawling type of bait, although you probably could do that with it. But awesome bait here. As you can see, they make it in like 4 sizes. So ranging from as small as 3 inches all the way up to 4.5. And I'm kind of wanting to get a couple more sizes of it to see how it performs, you know, alongside some other baits that I really like. Like say the Optimum Baits Baby Boom Boom swim bait. You get a pretty similar action in the way of an ideal medium speed retrieve swim bait that has that head wag along with the solid tail kick behind it. Not overwhelming tail kick, but really good action on both of those baits. So, so far so good. Really impressed. Happy with the Yum Scottsboro baits, and gonna get more. Okay. In fact, I've got a couple in my cart right now at Tackle Warehouse, and I very well might pull the trigger on a purchase at Tackle Warehouse in the next day or two. We'll see about that. All right, let's see here. Daniel says, I got that pattern, I think, in the 3.5 and the 4-inch. Nice. Yeah, they're pretty sweet, man. Very, very happy with them. Nick says, it's windy everywhere from what I hear. I was in the canoe and got blown all the way down the lake and almost bent a paddle trying to get back. That is pretty wild. Yeah, I don't know that I would want to be in a canoe, a John boat, kayak, anything that did not have any type of motor on it this time of year. It's been insane, and it's not showing many signs of letting up anytime soon. So we will see. It's been a relatively slow month of April for me. You know, only catching, what was it, 15 fish or something like that. Only about a half a dozen bass, maybe 7, something like that. But anyway, Matt says, Tyler, if you want tomorrow and if you're available, I can come on and do an unboxing with you. Show some of the baits I got from the hookup these past 2 weeks. Some of the swim baits I've tested. Yeah, man. I should be should be available, and I am interested. So yeah, let's talk about setting that up. That would be cool. Love to see some of the baits that you have. Although you might need to turn the light on in your place so that we can actually see them up close, man. Daniel says, I was throwing the Sunny Bluegill on a Cumberland Pro Apex underspin. Nice. Adam Odin, what's up, dude? How you doing tonight? Tom says, I've caught some fish on the Cumberland Pro underspin. Nice. And Ron says, the bluegill looks really nice. I have all the other colors. Well, dang. Yeah, the bluegill's a great color. But as I mentioned when I first unboxed these, I really do love this black shad color. I forget exactly what Yum calls it. Maybe black back shad. Yeah. It's essentially the same color pattern. And you can tell if you take a look at Kitech baits and the Yum Scottsboro baits that the color patterns are very, very similar to what you get with Kitech. So I think they just kind of ripped off a lot of the color patterns that Kitech has, and I'm not mad about it. So this blackback shad is very similar, and this was a color in Kitech that was awesome. They discontinued it, and it may or may not be back. It's come back sometimes. Not everybody has it, but yeah, that's a bait that I have a lot of confidence in. So kind of had to get a pack of that, and then the bluegill in order to just see what they're about. And now that I've tried them and have caught a handful of fish on them and have that confidence in these baits, I'm wanting to pick up more and in a little bit of a variety of sizes. So anyway, let's let that be the first bait in tonight's conversation, just about downsizing and the fact that sometimes going to a smaller presentation, like I have been with that 3.5 inch swim bait early season, uh, can result in more bites, sometimes bigger fish. So, uh, yeah, swim bait is a good example. While we're on the topic of swim baits, let's see if there's any others worth noting. None of these are small. These are kind of my bigger baits. Who's got suggestions for small swim baits that they like to throw and do recommend? You know, I wouldn't necessarily call this a small swim bait. You know, a 6-inch swim bait is not necessarily small, but you guys know that I do like 6-inch swim baits. This is the Savage Gear 40 pulse tail in the 6-inch. Super usable on a wide variety of gear. I would say the main one that I use and would recommend highly to everybody is the Pulse Tail Bluegill by Savage Gear. And this is the 4-inch size. So not a big bait. Super bite-sized for bass. Awesome, obviously, for bedding fish, but just year-round. Where bluegill like to hang around, there are usually bass close by as well. So this is a super realistic looking bait. It's got a great natural kick to it, and it's got a little bit of a rattle in the head of this bait. So super cool, and one that I have recommended before and will continue to. One that I mentioned recently but can't quite speak to because I haven't utilized it enough is the Huddleston Shad. Little 4-inch wedge tail bait, baby shad profile with that hook buried in there. Pretty cool bait, and one that should have gotten my attention by now, but just hasn't for whatever reason. And then obviously when we're talking, you know, soft plastic swim baits, it goes pretty wide on that. Anything in the 3 to 3.5 inch range is what I would consider finesse or downsized. I have not been a huge fan of 2.5, or even really 2.8-inch swim baits. Personally, I think once I step down to like a 3-inch, I feel and find that it's rather small. You know, here's the 3-inch Spark Shad by Megabass. That's about as small as I go. And after that, I really do like kind of a 3.3-inch swim bait, or what does Kitech call it? 3.2? 3.3. Strike King and others call it 3.25, 3.25. But yeah, that 3.3 is an awesome size. So I find that anything in that kind of 3 to 3.5-inch range is ideal. Usually, I'm fishing that thing on like a straight ball head jig, something in the ballpark of like a 1 or 2/0 hook exposed. But sometimes I will throw it weedless, like I have been with the Owner Flashy Swimmer and that 3.5-inch Yum. But that kind of covers swim baits. Ron, quarter ounce jig head is a little bit heavy in my opinion, my experience. Um, I tend to fish in the say 0 to 6 foot zone. Um, Oftentimes catching fish in like 2 to 5 feet of water. And so a quarter ounce is just a little bit heavy for those situations. I find that when I'm throwing a quarter ounce, it's either running too low in the column or I'm having to fish it too fast to get that ideal action. So I'm usually throwing an eighth or 3/16. More frequently a 3/16, but I find that an eighth does better than a quarter for me. Adam says my buddy and I caught a total of 34 bass last Sunday. Sweet, dude. Sounds like an awesome day. Honestly, I only have like a handful of days like that per year. So good for you for getting on a super productive day last week, man. That's awesome. Matt says I can switch my bulb. Haha. Yeah, you should. For the live stream tomorrow. Would not mind that. Short fat dude says, can you recommend a size of swim bait as well as a head for a medium heavy setup? Yeah, so it depends on whether you're throwing exposed or weedless, right? But the line is going to matter more in that situation. But if you're using a medium heavy setup, I would recommend, if we're downsizing, I would say in that 3.5 inch range. But really, you can go up and use like a 4.5 inch bait, no problem. Even up to a 4.8 inch Kitech, uh, without any issues. It's once you get in the 5+ inch range that it's going to be just a little bit much, a little bit overwhelming size wise, weight wise for the setup that you've got. That's where you want something that's going to have a lure rating north of an ounce, because a bait like this 5-inch spark shad probably weighs 5/8, borderline 3/4 of an ounce by itself. So once you add a jig head or a weedless keel weighted hook to it, it's going to be over an ounce. And if you're throwing a standard medium heavy setup, it's probably going to be a little bit overpowered by your setup. So that's where I would say something like the Optimum Baby Boom Boom with like a 4/0 owner beast hook would be awesome. I think they make the 4/0 beast hook in like a 1/8 and a 1/4, if I'm not mistaken. And that's a great option for it. It does say to use a 6/0 hook on here, but I don't think that's necessary on this 4.5-inch bait. So anything in that 3 to 4.5-inch size range is right. And if you're using a weedless hook, if you're using an underspin or just a keel weighted hook, or you're Texas rigging the swim bait, then I would recommend, a potentially a 1/0 if you're going in that 3-inch range, or bumping up to a 3/0 if you're going to go in that 3.5 to 4-inch range, maybe up to a 4/0 if you're going to use a 4.5. Okay. If you're using an exposed jig head, the weight is not as important as the size of the hook itself. So usually with say a 3-inch bait, you're going to want something in that like 1, maybe 2/0 size. Then as you get up closer to 4 inches, you're going to want a 3/0, and it's stepping up from there. So maybe as much as a 4/0 once you get to that 4.5-inch range. But Hopefully that kind of explains it. But the weight of the jig head is going to dictate the depth that your bait is running. And so that's personal preference. But depending on where you shop, you should be able to find a wide variety of weights combined with hook sizes, right? So this is that Berkeley Fusion underspin. I found it in this is either a 1/8 or a 3/16 ounce underspin. This is a 4-inch Kitech Easy Shiner swim bait, and I think it's got a 3/0 hook on there. And to me, that's a pretty sweet matchup right there. Definitely not too much hook. You know, you can see that I rigged it a little high in the bait. Yeah, technically this thing should be sitting a little bit more like that so that the hook's not rising so far out of the bait, but that's all right. Not a huge deal. That keeper on there is pretty fierce. Let me see if I can rig that just a hair better. Yeah, that's a hair better. But I think lengthwise, that 3/0 hook is nice on that 4-inch bait. Whereas you can see that this 2/0 hook on this Okashira screw head looks small on this 3.8-inch Kitech, even though I've cut the tail off the swim bait and it's probably a 3.5-inch bait. The hook looks short, right? Not overwhelmingly so, but just a hair short. So it's made to match up on that 3-inch Spark Shad a little bit better. Matt says the Kitech Fat Swing Impact 3.8 is a good small one, or the Power Wiggler from Berkeley. Dude, that Power Wiggler is not readily available everywhere. I mean, you can go to the Hookup or you can go to JDM sites, but the Power Wiggler is not a bait that most people have access to. But yes, the Kitech Swing Impact Fat in the 3.8-inch. Is an awesome finesse swim bait. Likewise, the Strike King Rage Swimmer is essentially just a knockoff of that bait. They call it the 3.75-inch size. I think essentially you just get one more per pack with the Rage Swimmer than you do with the Kitech for about the same price. Durability might be like a hair better, but you know, it to each his own. Here's a bait that slightly underrated, but we talked about this last stream. It's the saltwater version of the Swing Impact. Well, sorry, this is not the saltwater version. This is just a chartreuse shad color of the standard Swing Impact Fat. Where did I put those saltwater ones though? I had them out for last live stream. They come in a pack that looks like this. Saltwater version, max hard material. You get a stiffer action out of them. I actually have them in my bag, which is why they're not down here. But you get a tighter swimming action and a little bit better durability out of these max hard saltwater Kitechs, and it's still a pretty aggressive action. So I actually really like that. They just don't come in some great freshwater colors. you know, because they are made to be saltwater baits made by Kitech. But whoa, just skipped ahead. Tom says, I think you could say Kitech knocked off Yamamoto in that black shad color too. Probably not, but maybe. Both companies have been around a long time. Nick says, I got the Fish Lab BioGill soft bait, but I don't think I rigged it right. All right. Never seen a bluegill swim on its side. Yeah, I'm not super familiar with that Fish Lab BioGill soft bait. I can look it up though. Yeah, you need to throw that on like an owner beast hook. So, you know, my guess is it's something comparable to this guy right here. And 13 just came out with a new version of this bait, but um essentially what you get out of this guy is a weedless bait with a belly slot for you to rig your keel weighted belly hook through. Now, you could throw a jig head on this, but because of the contour of the back, it's not going to come out very much. And so these baits are made to have weedless hooks on them, like you see with this one. All right. So this bait has an owner beast 6/0 hook on there, made so that when you set the hook, voila, this bad boy pops all the way out and you've got all that bite. So really, you do need a hook like this where you're using a screw lock keeper in the nose of this bait and then rigging your hook through the belly and out the top of this bait. Does that make sense? So this thing remains weedless. And I think that's how that Fish Lab bait was designed to be. But owner makes the beast hook, and the other one that I recommend is the Trocar Magnum swim bait head. Okay, you should check both of those out. Dino says, I could see that HUD working here right now with the bass. The bass have been hitting live baby shiners when crappie fishing. Nice. Dudes usually go fast with those huddle shads over grass, say they get smashed. Well, that's probably something that I ought to give a shot to this season because I plan to fish more grass and shallow water specifically this season. You know, I've been getting more into super shallow diving crankbaits specifically, but just generally speaking, thinking about shallow water baits, how to get a little bit finessey and fish in super grassy situations. So, you know, you guys know that I've gone out of my way to buy, you know, more quarter ounce swim jigs and you know, the Mini Max chatterbait, for example. And by the way, that Mini Max chatterbait, I was fishing it the other day, and I think the gold blade and maybe just the vibration from the chatterbait with the calmer conditions that I had was a little bit too much for the situation. I wish I had had a swim jig to just swap right over to and fish in that situation because I think it probably would have gotten bit. But I will say I had some small like Ned style baits on me. One of them was the Strike King Rage Ned cutter worm. So they've got their cutter worm that's a 6-inch, you know, swimming worm, right? Just kind of like the the Zoom Speed Worm, and they've made it in a Ned sized bait. So here's the 6-inch cutter worm. You know, it comes with this attachment on it, which I guess I can appreciate so the tail doesn't get twisted. But it's a 6-inch swimming worm. Solid bait here. But what they did was downsize this thing completely to a 3-inch bait with a tiny little cutter tail on it and turned it into a Ned bait that can be swum through the water. So really cool idea. There's not a lot of Ned Rig hybrid baits that are meant to be fished slow as a Ned bait or to be swum through the water. Most people don't swim a Ned Rig, but it is certainly something you can do. And so I had those baits on me, and in that box I had some of the old flashback mini chatterbaits, which I've talked about historically a lot. It's a tiny little Ned Rig size hook, like a size 1 or a 1/0 hook, and it's a naked chatterbait with a tiny blade on it. I've always really liked that bait, especially in the heavier 1/8 ounce version, not the 1/16, because they make it in 2 sizes, but the 1/8 stays down a little bit better and it thumps really well. But I noticed using that bait shortly after using the Mini Max chatterbait that they feel a lot alike in the water. The vibration, the thump that you get from those two chatterbaits is pretty similar. So for what it's worth, keep that in mind. That is about the amount of vibration that you get out of the Mini Max chatterbait. It's definitely subtle, nothing like a jackhammer, but also significantly more than what you get out of like the Stealth Blade jackhammer. Which remind me, Matt, I will send you a Stealth Blade jackhammer, okay? I think I missed some comments. Frank says, I've been using the 2-inch swing impact and easy shiner from Kitech to catch panfish, but the bass and pike in my favorite pond always start hammering them. Both are out of season, so I end up moving. I hear you. Bass and pike are out of season for you. You're targeting panfish, but you end up catching them as well with those 2-inch baits. Yeah, I don't use the 2-inch easy shiner or the 2-inch swing impact, but I understand they're good baits. Definitely good multi-species baits. And I think it's cool that they make them in those sizes. But really, with both of those baits, I kind of automatically step up to like the 4-inch, and that's kind of my standard size for those baits. And we've talked about that before. You know, I've got a whole box of just 4-inch easy shiners. And yeah. The swing impacts, I carry in a little bit wider variety of sizes, but the 4-inch is kind of my bread and butter. I do have it in like the 3.5-inch, but I do prefer it in the 4 most of the time. So you'll see here's the 3.5, here's the 4, and then here is the 4.5. The 4.5 is like kind of a big bait. You'll see size-wise compared to the 4, it's significantly thicker and longer. It's actually got some meat to it. But you can see that all of these baits, they're super, super soft. They've got a really wide action to them. And so to me, the swing impact is more of like a summer swim bait. And the easy shiner is more of like a cold water swim bait. more of that, say, flat-sided bait. Take a look at that. Only bends over, say, the top 25% of the bait, if that. So really interesting that they cover the spectrum there with Kitech swim baits. Matt says, that Power Wiggler beats the Kitech and the Spark Shad for some reason. He doesn't know why. Okay. Brock Taylor says, what's the worst bait everyone has bought and knew that they had been duped? It's a good question. I like to leave them out of my memory for the most part, and I keep them out of sight. So I can't speak to a lot of them, but I mentioned this like a month ago. This bait, I knew it would probably suck, and it sure did. This is the Berkeley Bucktooth Beaver. This is a wake bait with a joint on it. It looks very Beaver-esque. All right. It has a really shitty swim. Did not like it at all. I think I spent 10 or 15 bucks on that thing. Another bait that I have sitting right here that I don't like, and some people do like it, I just was underwhelmed by it, is the Beast Coast Creep swim bait. I really wanted to like this bait. One, I mean, check out the color pattern on this thing. It's freaking sweet. That is a nasty yellow perch pattern. Really cool bait. And poured remarkably well. I'm a big fan of Beast Coast. I love the Miyagi swimmer. But the Creep, not so much. Check just how stiff. Look at how stiff this soft plastic is. That I don't know why they call it the Creep, but geez, I mean, this thing has to be swum very fast to get just a little bit of tail kick out of it. This thing is way too stiff. And on top of that, the plastic is so stiff that that this starts to happen. Like, I don't know why, but because it's poured mechanically, look at that, just too easily, the layers of this bait start ripping apart. I had to use Mend It on the top of this bait multiple times, after minimal use of this bait. Disappointment, to say the least. So I did not give that thing a whole lot of attention. But there have been a lot of baits out there that I've been disappointed with, and it's just kind of part of the game. But why don't you guys name a few too? That's a great question, Brock. I appreciate that. Adam says camping again this weekend, and the service sucks here. I keep losing the stream. Well, dang, Adam. You guys are camping a ton. Look at you guys. The scouts. Well, good on you, Adam. Frank says the Z-Man jackhammer is the worst bait I've bought. Nobody told me they have magnets installed in them so that they instantly get stuck in submerged wood. LOL. I love them actually. I was about to freak out, dude. Jackhammer is arguably my favorite bait. Period. And I've got a ton of them. Nick says, yep, the hook that it calls for is a 6/0 hook. Yeah, that makes sense. On that Fish Lab BioGill. Yeah, I think that could probably be the one, because it's the same size bait as this guy right here. This is the 13 Fishing Coalition BAMF shad. Same size as that bluegill bait that you bought. 5-inch bait, tall profile. Uh, so 6/0 owner beast or 5/6 or 7/0 with the Trocar Magnum swim bait head. Uh, not head, swim bait hook would be the way to go. Yeah, a 1/4 ounce is the way to go, especially with that 6/0 size. In my opinion, if you're trying to fish shallow, you could go up to a 3/8, but it's going to bring the bait down, force you to fish it a little bit faster. So it all depends on the situation that you're in, whether you want to step up to that 1/4 ounce or that 3/8 or leave it at a quarter. I feel like I'm close to catching up. Kid Iraq, Ray, my man, Tyler, you'll app this hooked up on a Ned. What? My son, he's 6, remember, dropped his rod to help me land. I saw a follower. His pole started leaving the boat. He grabbed it and fish on. Our first ever. He said, Tyler, you'll appreciate this. Hooked up on a Ned. Sweet, dude. Sweet, sweet, sweet. Caught a Ned Rig fish, huh? Well, that's pretty sweet. So you caught a fish on a Ned Rig, and while you were doing that and your son was trying to help you land your fish, he hooked up. So you guys had a double. That sounds awesome, dude. Frank says, I have at least one of each color of the swing impact in each size made. Jeez. 7.8 inch is awesome. In my opinion, that is or would be almost too big. I think this 6.8 inch is plenty big. You know, I've got this thing on an 8/0 owner beast, and I don't really want to get hooks much larger than this. I think this is a perfect match, and it's got a really good action, and it's still relatively castable. I think stepping up to that 7.8 inch is just going to be almost overkill, too big of a bait. But I'm sure at some point I will get them. I just don't know exactly when and where I will fish it. Plus, I've really liked the old discontinued Kitech or Megabass 7-inch Spark Shad. Really kind of hard to get your hands on, but awesome bait. Okay, at least one color of each size. There you go. Ron says, is that one of those things you hold for your son, the Beaver? No, but to your point, it is one that I should take the split rings and hooks off of and give to my kids. I've got a tackle box full of baits upstairs that I've done that for my kids. I did it for my girls starting when they were toddlers, and now I let my son play with lures too. So he's got a Stred King Red Eye Shad that's kind of beat up in a sexy shad pattern that he's been playing with a lot recently. Just kind of likes to shake it and hear the rattles. But my girls have jerk baits, rattle traps, square bills, kind of a wide variety of stuff. And I like for them to know what is what when it comes to different types of lures, but also to just be interested and like the look of things. So, I've got some old bomber long A jerk baits that are in like some wild saltwater colors, pink and purple and stuff that I let them play with. Got an old uh, cotton Cordell super spot that's in a chrome and purple that they love. So some girly baits color wise, some chartreuse square bills and things like that. Brock says fish sticks KBD. Wow. Fish sticks. Yeah. Okay, Adam. So all your kids are in the scouts, and you are just the scout leader, up and down, dude. Nice. So should we get into some other categories of baits? Um, we can just kind of go from the top down. Let's start with frogs and talk about a couple smaller frogs that I like. Let me hear your guys' opinions as well. Obviously the one that most people would mention first, and that I will mention first, is the Jackal Cara frog, Cara, however you want to pronounce that. Uh, but this guy is a small profile frog, but still very castable. Um, has some decent weight on it. So for a small frog, you can fish this anywhere that you would fish an ordinary frog, uh, typically sized frog, I should say, and it's a good one for sure. So I got a bunch of them, but here's the Gavacho next to it. You can see size wise that the Cara is a very small bait, awesome little frog that just gets the job done. Okay. Uh, it's got slightly smaller hooks on it that fit the body very well. Uh, it's got a stiff, relatively durable, yet collapsible body on it. Really good hookup ratio on that frog. Kind of a must have. I've got just a couple other small frogs to mention that I have and do use somewhat frequently. Three specifically. One is the Spro bronzai frog. This is the old, what is it? Probably a 50. So standard bronzai frog, just in the downsized version. Now I throw the bigger standard bronzai frog uh, more frequently than I do the downsized version. Okay, you can see size wise just how much smaller it is than its bigger brother, and the 60 is the regular size, not even getting into bigger sizes. Now with the Spro bronzai frogs, I prefer the poppin bronzai to the regular. I find that the bodies are a bit softer, and I really like that cupped face and the way that this bait works in the water walking. For whatever reason, I've ran into one too many of the original bronzes that have a little bit too firm of plastic on them, and it's just, I don't know, not at the top of my list when it comes to walking frogs. But one thing I recommend is that you take your frogs out of the package when you're in the store and feel them for yourself. You'll notice that some of them, uh, the hooks don't match up perfectly with the body, and so you don't want to buy that. The plastic can be a little bit too stiff. You don't want to buy that. Um, but you can find good ones, and so that Spro Bronzai 50 is one that I do recommend. Another one is the tiny little live target. I forget even what they call this size, but this is a little guy and it's a killer. So I'll show you the three sizes of live target frogs side by side, going from small to medium to large. So this is the Big Daddy, the full size. I guess you could call it a bullfrog. Definitely still not a bullfrog, but it kind of dwarfs the normal size. And this is a standard size frog, and this is still my go-to when it comes to the live target frogs. And I absolutely love this bait. It's not the most durable frog on the market. You know, it does tear relatively easy, but it is super collapsible. Hookup ratio on it is fantastic. But you'll see that this small size of this guy, again, is dwarfed by its big brother in the standard size frog. So pretty wild to think that when you put the small guy and the big guy next to each other, that the small guy really looks small. So that's a frog to have for downsizing. And then here is one. The Booyah Toad Runner Junior. Underrated bait, I would say. And I throw this junior size more than I throw the original Toad Runner for no particular reason other than the fact that the tail, I think, is the exact same. And I'm wrong about that. The tail is slightly smaller on the Toad Runner Junior than it is on the Toad Runner, but to me, it feels like the action is about as prominent on the Toad Runner Junior as what you get in the full-size Toad Runner. And I love how you can manipulate the pitch and the action of this bait by bending the tail because of that wire that's running in the tail. You know, for example, you can just bend this, and all of a sudden, that thing is going to have a much more aggressive action to it. Or vice versa, you do the opposite and you bend that thing out, and this thing is going to have a very subtle kick to it. So, super cool, innovative design with the Toad Runner. Comes with a really good swivel on there. And I like this bait as much, maybe even a little bit more than I like the Teckle Sprinker, even though they're pretty much the same bait, right? Ray says, sorry, tried to condense that because of the word limit. No problem, dude. I did get it eventually. Sorry about that. That's crazy that the bass that was following grabbed his lure at the boat. That's super cool, man. Oh, you have the glitter gill version of the Kara? Yeah, the glitter gill is a sweet color pattern for sure. And I might have it. I just, I've got a pile of frogs sitting here, among other things. And so I don't know for certain whether I have it. But yeah, the gill color patterns with the jackal frogs are sweet for sure. All right, let's move on to other topwater categories because topwater is fun to talk about, right? Let's talk about wake baits for a minute because I don't throw a lot of small wake baits, at least yet. But there might be a couple worth noting. One that I threw a little bit of last year and I like is this guy right here. This is the dual hardcore shad crank. And this is in the 0+ version. Okay, let me see if I can get this to focus for you so you can see what this bait is. Almost had it there. Dual hardcore shad crank 0+. So this is like a 1/4 ounce crankbait. You see it's 65 millimeters. So it's just 2.5 inches long, relatively small bait, but like what you get with almost all dual hardcore baits is you get this magnetic weight transfer system, which unfortunately I can see really well and you guys can't see in this bait right now, but there's a magnet holding the weight right here right now. And as you cast this thing, it shifts to the back. Those two balls roll to the back and then boom, boom. Now they're stuck. Okay. You've got rattles up in the front of the bait. They give it a very kind of quiet, subtle rattling sound, which is unique for a wake bait. Most wake baits have kind of a loud knocker to them. And so I think this just helps the bait stand out a little bit. It's also a little bit more natural and shad-like than what you get out of a lot of other wake baits. You know, for example, a favorite of mine is the KVD 2.5 wake bait, but it has that super loud one knocker sound, and it's a 2.5 size bait that's fairly large. So, totally different with what you get in that dual hardcore shad crank. Now, another bait, Ron Holly's favorite bait in the world is the Bbz Rat in the size 30. I'm not going to take the 50 out because it's hard to get back in my box, but I'll show you the 40, the 30, and the 25. I'm really a big fan of the 40 and the 30. Not as much the 25 or the 50 quite as much. So this little 25 is almost too finessey for me. You know, it kind of reminds me of like the Whopper Plopper 60. Just absolutely minuscule. Doesn't have quite enough going for it, you know? The rattle is super quiet. The action is super subtle. I think it would be a better daytime bait in still water, in creeks maybe, but the 40 and the 30 size of the Bbz Rat are awesome. The 40 has caught more fish for me, but partially because I have fished it more than the 30, but the 30 has done really well for me too. This guy is more like a half ounce. This is a pretty subtle wake bait, all things considered. I think you've got a nice middle of the road rattle sound there compared to a little bit more of a true one knocker that you get with the 40 size. So that Spro Rat 30 would be one that I recommend in the wake bait category. Okay. Next, we'll talk about poppers in 1 second. Matt says, if you could only recommend 3 post-spawn top water baits, what would they be and why? That's a little bit complex of a question, but I appreciate it. You know, a popper is going to be number one, just because fish are not, they're not moving quite as much yet at that point. They're still kind of exhausted from the spawn, and they might have just started to drop off and are thinking about feeding up, but they're not aggressively chasing yet. It takes a little bit of time for them to recover and for the water to really warm up to the point where they are super aggressive. But after a popper, I would say a Whopper Plopper would be number 2 for me. I have a lot of confidence in a Whopper Plopper, low light conditions, especially. There's just a lot of different ways to fish it. So I will play around with my retrieve around high percentage areas, especially around laydowns and on points and things like that, where I know that fish are likely to be positioned. I will make a long bomb cast, bring it to where I know that the fish are likely positioned, and then stop and go. Work the bait with, twitches, pull that bait, do a little bit more with it. Um, so Whopper Plopper is probably number two, and then you got my head spinning a little bit, dude. Number three is probably a toss up between a walking bait and a wake bait, but it depends on the time of day. So I'm going to throw both of them to cover a little bit more water, but I'm going to use a wake bait more in super low light conditions, and I'm going to use a walking bait more typically um, in daylight. So it kind of depends, but a popper and a plopper are at the top of my list, man. Ray says, "Oh, and cutting a Bass Pro Senko in half has been the number one Ned bait for me this year. Nothing on the Ned Cutter Worm, whoop whoop whoop, yet, or the Z-Man Hulas, or their Ned Cross. Strike King Ned Bug was February March deal." Yeah, I agree. In fact, I've got this bait like pulled out as something that helped motivate the topic of tonight's live stream. I think that this bait is not talked about enough. The Strike King. Oh, sorry, not the Ned bug, but rather the Rage Tail baby bug. Okay, and this is Ned Rig length. Focus, 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 focus for us. You can do it. You can do it. There she is. Baby bug. All right. This is a rage bug, full on profile and everything, just in a tiny package. Really, really good bait here on a tiny Texas rig, on a straight jig head, on a jig, a micro jig, and also good on a Ned rig, or rather, I would say one of the best ways to fish it, which I have not yet tried because this jig head is new, but I will rig one up and just show you guys what it looks like and get myself excited about it too, is on the Z-Man football Neds jig heads. So this is a football jig head, but on a Ned style hook. So this is a 3/16 ounce, but it's a 1/0 hook. So let's go ahead and see how she rigs up. Oh, 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 baby. Oh, look at that freaking thing right there. Does that not match up size-wise just perfect? Golly. I I'm pumped about that. I'm going to leave this rigged. I'm going to throw this soon. This baby rage bug is slept on. And I don't know what the deal is. The Rage Bug is awesome. The Magnum Rage Bug is awesome. The Baby Rage Bug is awesome. I'm sure even the mid-size Rage Bug that they just came out with for no apparent reason is awesome. But I don't have those. I don't see much of a need for them because I find that the standard Rage Bug is awesome. And if I want it mid-size, I'll cut it down a quarter or a half of an inch. I don't need a half-inch smaller bait. But it's what a sick pairing this is. Yes. I don't love the Rage Ned Bug by Strike King. Sorry to say it. I think the body is a little bit too narrow. And I think that's a big part of what makes the Rage Bug awesome is that profile not being round, but being more beaver-like. But just me. Chicken Fried Steak says, howdy from Central California, everyone. Whoop, whoop. How are things? Doing great, man. Doing great. How are you? Hope all is well, man. Daniel says, I think we refer to it as what he calls the Hendrix Rat. Yeah, no, he does. Matt says, I saw that little Z-Man frog in person, and it's super tiny. Kind of crazy, though, to be honest. You could probably catch a crappie or a bluegill on it. Z-Man frog. Tiny Z-Man frog? Are you talking about an Elaztec toad style frog? Or are you talking about I have their small frog. I just didn't mention it because I don't love it. But look how long these skirts come on these guys. Ridiculous. They're like, yeah, you cut them. Just lazy, if you ask me. But yeah, these are small frogs for sure. But they've got a really deep belly, which is good and bad with these baits. They tear really easily at the hook slots. You can see on this small one, I fished it once, and this thing is tearing right where the hook and the weight go in. So the build quality is not fantastic on those, but we'll leave that alone. Adam says, I want a Spro Rat, but I can't find them anywhere. Dude, I wish I could give you great advice, and I wish I had spares of the Spro Rats, but I haven't ever had to really get spares because they hold up so damn well. And I've only got like one or two in each size, I think. I've got one of the 50. I've got like two of the 40. And I don't even know where all of them are. Like, I have fished them so much in the last couple of years that I've kind of misplaced a couple of them. But, yeah, I wish I could tell you where to get them, dude. Chicken Fried Steak says Whopper Plopper early morning along the bank. Yeah, dude. For sure. Bucky the Beaver, man. Bucky the Beaver. Sick bait. Not. Although I think they do make this in a plopper style bait and not a wake bait. Probably should have gotten that. Like a Chapo Beaver. Could have been better. Maybe. No, Matt, I don't use a buzzbait much. However, I am wanting to step up my buzzbait game. I bought a handful of high quality buzzbaits last year. I've got the Jamaica Boa, I've got the Jackal Firecracker, I've got a few others that that make me really want to get into throwing a buzzbait. But no, when I'm thinking about a straight retrieve topwater bait, I'm usually gonna default to a Whopper Plopper and not a buzz bait. And that, I don't know if that's just because I'm more new school than old school, but I find it to be more versatile, and I like to work a Whopper Plopper in multiple ways. Whereas a buzz bait is just a straight cover tons of water. There is only one way to fish it, and it is what it is. So no, I'm not a huge buzzbait fisherman because I fish from the bank. You know, if I had a boat and I had a ton of water to cover, just put that trolling motor on high and just burn down the bank. Yeah, I'd probably be huge into buzzbaits, but it just hasn't been the deal for me. Daniel says, I have similar to the baby rage bug. I have the Z-Man TRD bugs. Yeah, that is not all that similar, actually. If I can find them. The TRD bugs is definitely a smaller bait and a slightly more appropriate Ned Rig bait than the striking baby rage bug. Okay, you can see, and I'm trying to put these literally side by side so you can see that the TRD bugs is smaller. I think it's a 2.5 or 2 3/4 inch bait versus the baby rage bug at 3 inches. But I guess they're kind of similar. But what you get is that baby rage bug has the flange. It kicks really well, acts as an awesome jig trailer, great Texas rig bait. Whereas these TRD bugs is truly, it's a micro jig trailer or a Ned bait. You could throw it on a drop shot as well, and it's got awesome action because these kickers will actually separate and then come back together when you hop and work the bait. Really cool action out of this bait, but I don't see it as all that similar to the baby rage bug. I see it more similar to like the Berkeley Pit Boss Junior. Okay, in terms of profile, this is like a traditional flipping style beaver bait than what you get out of the rage bug. That is a little bit more versatile and can be swum through the water on a jig head, on a tiny chatterbait, on a small jig. You can work that thing, and on a hopping style retrieve, that thing will actually swim and kick for you. So a little bit different. Matt says, "Now I'm talking about off plastic finesse frogs." Yeah. Okay. Here's the finesse frogs. I haven't fished these because I just picked them up in the off season. I've got the full size one, um, and have fished it with some success. And I thought to get these to either work on a Ned rig or, I don't know, a tiny Texas rig, or on a mini buzz bait, something like that. This is a very small bait. Okay, this is a Ned rig size bait, 2 3/4 inch. So this would take a 1/0 hook. Really small bait, but pretty sweet. It's definitely going to have a different action than what you'd get out of like the Z-Man baby goat, which is a little bit unique and also has been a favorite of mine over the last season or two. So the baby goat is a much more streamlined profile in what you get out of like the Strike King Rage Menace Grub, and they make a baby size of that bait as well that I use from time to time, not as frequently as the standard size, but good bait as well. You know, these are all my Finesse Jig Trailers. Here's that. This is that Pit Boss Junior I was talking about. Definitely a little bit bigger, longer than what you get out of the Trd Bugs. So I was kind of wrong about that, but the action profile reminded me of that. But here's that Baby Rage Menace Grub, which is a lot like the Baby Goat. All awesome little baits. Here's a little bait that is super slept on. Nobody talks about it, especially on the back of a finesse jig, a micro jig. How about the Zoom Tiny Brush Hog? A 3-inch brush hog. Really, really cool action. Okay. That is all I will say about that bait. Very impressed with it. Highly recommend it. You know, you could throw it on tiny little Strike King Bitsy Bug jig, 1/16 ounce. And thing is deadly. Awesome, awesome little bait there. Mark says, get the suicide duck instead of the beaver. I love the duck. As I've told you before, I'm not all that interested in the suicide duck, but do you have multiple of the suicide duck? I'll trade you for I don't really want that bait, nor do I want this bait, but maybe my kids will want it. I do like the fact that they painted the buck teeth on the frosted bill of that beaver. Matt says, might want to check the I'm a Little Voice. It's a small, compact buzz bait. Works pretty good. And the head keeps the bait up a little bit better. It's a good river bait. Okay. I have a couple of finesse buzz baits, but don't love them. In my opinion, a buzz bait excels when it is most obnoxious. Now, within reason, right? You know, there's a time to have a squeaker versus a clacker. But generally speaking, you want a buzzbait that is squeaky. You want one that is loud. And a super subtle buzzbait is kind of a tricky thing for me. I've had a couple of like double buzz with small blades and haven't fallen in love with them. That's just me, but I might look into that. I'm a Little Voice. Ron says the Spros have gone up in price. I've got a dozen of them. I got a dozen of them last year, 10 something each. I assume you're talking about frogs and not rats. Daniel says the Flans just sold me on the Rage over the Z-Man TRD. Well, yeah, it just depends on what you're going to do with the bait, right? the TRD Bugs is more of a true Ned Rig bait. But as we've talked about before, the Ned Rig is a more versatile uh, presentation or application than what most people give it credit for. Most people assume that all you're going to do is thread on a Ned Rig head and you're going to throw that thing out there, let it hit bottom, and you're going to slowly work that thing back, maybe hop it from time to time. There's pretty much one retrieve to a Ned Rig, and that is so not true. And that is why now there are like 10 or more different Ned Rig baits made by just Z-Man alone, and why every company is now coming out with not just their own Ned Rig stick bait, but also Ned Rig baits of all profiles and actions. So, yeah, the Ned Rig can be fished in more than one way. And so if you're going to fish it like a traditional a super buoyant, you know, claws up, and you want that more subtle action, the TRD craws and the TRD bugs are awesome for that, because that Elastec will make the bait stand up. The TRD craws is just going to look like a defensive craw. It's actually a little unnatural with the claws straight up. Kind of have to work the bait a little bit quicker, almost dragging it to have those claws be more at an angle than straight up and down. But the bugs, you can hop and pop that thing and it will fall and hit the bottom. And like I said, those claws will separate on the hop, and as it lands, boop, they'll come right back together and just have this streamlined profile that is really enticing. And then you hop it and it will glide through the water and kind of dart around. That TRD Bugs is a very interesting bait, but has kind of a specific retrieve that you need to work it on. And it is a Ned Rig bait. Whereas this Baby Rage Bug can be worked on a Ned Rig, but really on a football head or like a tiny, if there were such thing as like a baby wobble head, this would be the deal. Tiny Texas rig essentially is that. So you throw a 1/8 ounce tungsten weight on there with a 1/0 hook. Something like this guy right here, the owner twist lock. And I freaking love this hook. This guy right here, it's the owner all-purpose twist lock hook. It's got that small size CPS spring. Just screw that bad boy up on there. And it's got a relatively light wire hook on it. And voila, you've got a weedless presentation that not only looks good, but fishes well and hooks them very well. Awesome gap and clearance on there. The hook fits the bait flawlessly. So, yeah, throw a tiny little bullet weight on there, and this thing does awesome. You throw it on a finesse jig or a micro jig, wicked trailer with the Rage Bug. Chicken Fried Steak says, I don't use Z-Man stuff. Don't want it mixing and melting on my stuff. Well, I hear you, dude. And that's why you got to keep everything in their original bags. You have to store them separately. It's kind of unfortunate, but it is what it is. Really good stuff, though, from a buoyancy and durability standpoint. You're probably going to have to get on that at some point. If you notice, lots of other companies are jumping on that bandwagon, and for good reason. So, a couple other examples of companies that are doing it really well. so far. Molix has made some of their flex stuff. Here's a Ned bait of theirs. This thing is awesome. Super cool profile that you get out of this bait with the flex stick. Super buoyant, unlike really anything that Z-Man makes. So I'm a fan of this bait. And they make a couple other flex baits from Molix, but check out this packaging too. Small, fits the bait just perfectly, so you don't need to take them out of the package because they fit kind of anywhere you go. Savage Gear is the other company that has started to do this really well with their Duratech material. These things come in a clamshell, which is cool. And as you would expect, Savage Gear does an awesome job at making really realistic profiles. Check this thing out. That is essentially a perfect crawdad imitation, and it's super durable. This thing fishes well on a short leader drop shot, on a Ned rig. I imagine that on that football Ned head would be sick. Micro jig, sick. And they make a couple of other really cool profile baits that are also made from that Duratech material. Savage Gear and Molix have found ways to scent their baits, which are really cool. Savage Gear makes a salamander bait. Check out just the action on this thing. Really realistic profile with all four of these legs, and then a super segmented body. And it's scented. I had a lot of success on the salamander last year, and definitely do recommend it. Now, their minnow bait that they make from Duratech, I do not like and do not recommend it, but one that I picked up and am excited to try this year is their Ned Dragon Tail Worm. And they make the Dragon Tail Worm in a couple of different sizes, but this is the small 3-inch guy. And voila. This is a sick little worm baitfish hybrid type of guy that could be fished in multiple ways. And I think its bigger brothers will do really well on the back of a chatterbait or on like a screwhead type of deal. You know, really cool bait there. Adam says, I think I'm the only person that doesn't use Z-Man plastics. Well, Chicken Fried Steak just said that. I get frustrated trying to rig them. I know the issue is me, but it is what it is. Yeah, it requires a little bit of practice. Can be frustrating, but you kind of got to learn to be able to do it, you know? You want a demonstration? This is the Strike King Z2 jerkbait, Elastec. thread this thing up on a jackhammer chatterbait. Do a little slower than you would with a normal bait. Thread, thread, thread. And then you have to grab it by the front and pull it up over the keeper. You'll notice then it's not quite centered on the bait. Kind of have to play around with it. Push it up on there and pull, push and pull to get it to lay perfect on that hook. The same is true kind of no matter how you rig this thing. You have to do a little bit of pulling up on the neck of the bait. And, you know, if you don't thread it on there perfect the first time around, pull it off and try again, right? So same goes for all of their baits. But I don't know what to tell you. Sorry, dude. It's funny, I actually have another finesse jig here. This is the Booyah Baby Boo jig. Used to be one of my, I mean, I suppose it still is one of my favorite finesse jigs when it comes to like micro jigs, especially in a 1/8 ounce size, because of fine the skirting material is, especially in comparison to like this Strike King. What did I say it was? The I don't even know. Sorry. I just said it a minute ago, but I like the weed guard better on this thing. The hook is just a hair thinner, but really great jig with the baby boo jig, and it's cheap. But look how awesome this baby rage bug matches up on this jig. So great little finesse jig trailer with that baby rage bug. Didn't even realize that was sitting there as well. Mark says, I'll tease for the beaver. Tease or trade? You got the yellow and brown one. You talking about the duck? Trade? Yeah, dude. If you want to trade, maybe I mean I could probably make it more worth your while since you like the duck. I could send you something that you actually might like in return. Because I don't like that beaver. But let's talk about it, man. Because just off of looks, I'm not into that duck, but I could be convinced, and I've got an excess of stuff that we could work something out for sure. Tom says I used to drop shot the tiny brush hog. Interesting. Yeah, I'm sure that would do pretty sweet. I find that it's usually best on bottom, but yeah, tiny Carolina rig, drop shot, dragging, free rig, or better yet, like a Jika rig. And then, like I said, a like finesse jig, micro jig. That's a sleeper bait, no doubt. Interesting. Ron had gotten 10 of the Spro frogs at like $10 a pop. How much are they going for now, dude? I don't know what that is. All right, let me pee real quick. I'll be back in 1 minute. We can move on to a couple of other categories and talk about downsized baits, if you will. Oh, hopefully I don't. Holy shnikey. my God. Not super cool. Definitely spilled a little bit. Whoop-a-daisy. Whoop-a-daisy. Bbz Bug is the one I was thinking of, Tom. Not the Bbz Flip. The Bbz Flip has a stouter hook on it, but the Bbz Bug is the one that I use more frequently. And in a wide range of colors. But if, say, we compare the Green Pumpkin Bbz Bug, and I should get out a 1/8 instead of a... We pull out an appropriate size. Wrong jig, wrong jig. I really prefer the 1/8. All right, not the right color, but... So I guess this is a 1/8 and this is a 3/16. They're not the same size, but you can see that the skirting material on the Bbz Bug is flatter and a little bit more sparse. It's not bad by any means, but it dries up and it rips up, pulls out a lot more easily than what you get out of the Booyah Baby Boo jig, where you get just a lot more skirting material and a better jig. Also on the Bbz Bug, you get this relatively crappy hook on there. It's not horrible, but on the Booyah, you get a mustad hook that is quite a bit higher quality, in my opinion, and is a big reason that I prefer that jig. And it's not all that much more expensive. You know, they're both in that $2.50 range. $2. Cheap jigs, you know. Mark says, okay, cool. I'll think about it. Let me know. Okay, think about it. Let me know. All right. Fair enough, dude. I will give it a little bit of thought. Although it would be best for us to kind of discuss that offline, and you let me know what it is that, I don't know, is on your radar, or what you might like in exchange for that duck, because that fits into the category of something that, you know, I haven't wanted to spend the money on, wouldn't spend the money on, but would give a shot if you traded with me. Now, I could send you if you wanted something a little bit more practical, I could send you a bunch of my homemade jigs, and I make these with high quality living rubber, marabou, owner and gamakatsu hooks. So if you wanted a handful of these, you know, hand tie them, wire tied. Definitely an option, but it's totally up to you in terms of like what you might actually want, dude. Daniel says the Spro Frogs are $11 on Omnia before discount, but they're still $9.94 on discount tackle. Well, dude, Ron. So how much of a discount did you really get on the Spro Frogs? And yes, Ron, you did tell me. Ron sent me a text a couple weeks back about a bag that you can pee into. Like I don't know how it attaches, or if you just shove your wiener into it. But as you pee into this bag, like if I was just sitting here right now, I could just pee into it. It absorbs the pee and converts it into a gel immediately. And it's like a disposable pee bag of some kind. The thing kind of freaked me out, and I know it was mostly a joke, but was hilarious and not something I would use, Ron. All right. All right, let's stay on top water and talk about Finesse Poppers for 1 second. Downsizing poppers can be absolutely the deal. I've talked about this guy right here a lot and just how productive it was for me last year. But yeah, that Rebel Pop R in this small size, that 1/4 ounce version, is awesome. Same with the Strike King. Same with, most makers do make a small size popper, but I would say one of my favorites as well is the Megabass Pop X. Most people skip right over the Pop X and go to the Pop Max, which, in all fairness, is an awesome, awesome bait. Here they are side by side, though. You can see just how much bigger the Pop Max is compared to the Pop X. Not just height, but profile and just how fat it is. So the Pop Max is like a small walking bait that can pop really well. So this is like a multiple action type of popper that will catch big fish in popper types of scenarios. But the Pop X has just a little bit steeper of a cup on it. If you see side by side, you'll see that the angle on the Pop X is a little bit steeper, or maybe not steep, if you will. Not as cupped. So a lot more finesse, and that Pop X is killer. So small poppers, when the bite is tough, when fish are up shallow, especially like Matt said in the post spawn, that can be an absolutely killer way to target fish on a top water, is with a small popper. And you should not overlook that. You're going to fish it like you would a traditional popper on a slow cadence, where you're working that thing with just a single or a double bloop at a time every few seconds. You're not working that thing like you would a Rico, and you're not walking it either. It's just like kind of a standard popper style retrieve, but a downsized popper can be an awesome way to not only catch fish when they're not biting, but to trigger a school of fish, and really get a bite going before then you size up to cull the size of the fish that you're catching and to target bigger fish after that. Tom says, I stopped using the Bbz bug because of the bronze hook in it. Yep. If it had a better wire hook in it, it would be a good little jig. The Bbz flip is more to my liking. Yeah, the Bbz flip is, it's got a better hook in it, but it is a little bit heavy of a hook for my liking. I find that Booyah Baby Boo Jig still has a light wire hook, but a much higher quality hook with that mustad ultra point hook as opposed to that bronze hook that is just kind of crappy that you get in the Bbz bug. But I totally hear what you're saying. I just find that the Bbz flip is a little bit too heavy wire for that presentation. Mark says, I'm all in on them jigs. For the duck, those are nice. What color of duck do you want? Yellow or brown? What color is the underside of those ducks is the better question. I am inclined to say brown, but you know, yellow sounds more fun in some ways. Matt says that little Megabass Dog X Junior Kawaii gets bit in the post spawn, and the fact that it sinks makes it even better because on the pause you can let it get down a bit and then twitch it back up to the surface. Yeah, that bait looked pretty cool to me. Same with the Megabass Swing Hot, which is a small popper style bait that walks really well and has a subtle action as well. Obviously, it's not a traditional walking bait like the Dog X Kawaii. You know, the Kawaii is just that it doesn't travel very far, but it has that super smooth walk to it. Whereas that Swing Hot is a popper that walks really well, kind of side to side, almost in place, spits water, but has a smooth action, can be worked pretty fast, and it has that swiveling hook hanger on it. Looks pretty cool. How about walking baits? There's got to only be one or two more top water categories. Am I right? You know, top water baits can be big, right? Like this is the Mega Dog from Strike King. This is the 6 cents. Do they call it the Mega Dog? I don't know which one is which. Yozuri makes a pretty big pencil popper. Look at this thing. This is like the Megabass Pop Max made by River to Sea. Also has those gill plates with the holes. And this thing is essentially just an extra large version of the Pop Max. And this is the Bubble Popper, Bubble Walker. Bubble Walker 128. Big ass bait. And then the shower blows they make in a big ass 150 size. So walking baits can come in very large sizes that most people would associate using with, you know, if you're targeting striper or absolutely mega largemouth, which to a certain extent is true. But on the flip side of things, you can go really small with a topwater walking bait. And I'm not talking about a head-in you know, Zara Puppy or something like that. But a Super Spook Junior, for example, is a great option. In that same category is the Sexy Dog Junior, or better yet, the Kick Knocker Pup. All of these are right in that like 4-inch range, small topwater walking baits, downsized. Okay, throwing a downsized walking bait can be the deal. All of these baits have a different action and sound to them. It's one thing that I really like about the Sexy Dog is that you get the knocker from the weights in the back of the bait, and then you get the rattle from these BBs up in the nose of the bait. You get multiple sounds, and then that Kick Knocker Pup, you get a little bit of the same. But how about stepping down to something like the Evergreen Shower Blows in the 105, or the Evergreen JT 95. Awesome little walk-in bait here, silent. We talked about this recently because I just picked a second one up not long ago. So 4-inch topwater walking baits are slept on for sure. But more than that, the shower blows kind of deserves a separate conversation in itself. And they just released this guy last year in the Shower Blows Shorty, or 77.7. This bait right here, I am still dialing in to find the proper gear to really get the action that I want out of it. You know, a lot of these baits have kind of a sweet spot size-wise, and I do find that you can get too small if you are trying to use anywhere near the same gear to throw these. So, you know, the Shower Blows 105, for example, is an awesome downsized bait from the 125. Just like the Whopper Plopper 110 is an awesome downsized version of the 130, and the 75 an awesome downsize of the 90. But stepping down to the Whopper Plopper 60 and the Shower Blows Shorty 77.7, it's hard to really dial in and figure out how best to utilize this thing. You kind of need like a 10-pound braid to a 8-10-pound mono leader, and you'd need like a true medium or medium light action rod. And I think I was throwing this on something that was not all that far off and still struggled to get it to do exactly what I wanted to do. I might have been throwing it on 20-pound braid and a slightly lighter line than that. You know, this actually feels about right. Maybe about a 10-pound leader, but I struggled to get this thing to walk just right. But really cool bait, and I think that once it's dialed in, this thing will be as great as its bigger brothers. But if you think about this, it's essentially the same size as like the Pop Max popper, just made with a different built-in action meant to be walked, but with the ability to pop, as opposed to the Pop Max meant to be popped, but with the ability to walk. So there's got to be an ideal time and place for it, but I have not quite figured that out just yet, simply because the 105 is so good and quite a bit easier to use, if you will. Mark says the yellow duck has a white underbelly and the brown duck has a yellow underbelly. Interesting. Let's do the yellow duck with the white underbelly. I'll take that. Matt says, I'm going to try those Berkeley Frenzy Walkers this year. Wanted to test them out. They look good and have a good sound. The Frenzy Walker, I don't really know what bait that is. I should know, but it doesn't ring a bell to me. Daniel says, the Head and Super Spook Junior 3.5 versus the Super Spook Booyah 3-inch is one better than the other. No, so I actually, to my knowledge, I don't have the Booyah yet, but my understanding is that the Booyah bridges the gap and really helps to bring a downsized version of the Super Spook Junior and give you a lot of the same performance that you get out of the Super Spook Junior, but in a body closer to the puppy. So a lot of people loved the Zara puppy because it's a really small and finessey bait, which it is, and it's a good bait, but it's hard to cast and is super finessey. So the Booyah is essentially a smaller version of the Super Spook Junior, I think. So is one better than the other? No. It's just I think the Booyah is probably a little bit more of a multi-species bait, whereas I think the Super Spook Junior is a little bit more of a bass bait, even smallmouth or spotted bass. I think that it is a downsized walking bait, but that Booyah is supposed to be even more so. So, good point bringing it up though, because to your point, it really fits this category as well or better than anything that I talked about, and really is kind of the same size as this tiny little shower blow shorty, right? Such a small little bait. Matt says, usually need a light rod for them or a medium like I use for the Dog X Junior. Because when I use a too heavy of a rod, it doesn't want to walk well. Yeah, it's exactly what I'm saying. But even still, I think I was using a medium power rod. I think it had more to do with the line that I was using. I was using a spinning reel with maybe like 10-pound leader material or 10-pound mono and a medium power rod. I don't know exactly where I went wrong on that, but it was unfortunate the way that, like, I didn't give it enough time to really play around and see what was wrong with it in that specific situation. But I didn't give it very long because it felt off, and I did not have a lot of time or enough gear on me to really mess around and just dial in that one bait that day. So I kind of gave up on it pretty quickly. But yeah, I will get that figured out at some point. And I'll keep you guys posted, of course. But guys, we've been in here 2 hours and 15 minutes. Of course, I'm not going to go through every category tonight like I thought I would kind of fly through, most of my boxes and categories in general. Last thing to mention in top waters right now, at least with hard baits, is the Whopper Plopper, right? I already mentioned this, but I'll say it again. You could throw the big dog, the 130, and you're going to get a lot of commotion out of that thing. It kicks really hard. It's super loud. But I find that the second that you downsize to something like the 110, boom, you get more castability, you get better action. It's a little bit more fishable because it doesn't catch grass as easily as the 130. And I like the profile looking a little bit more natural and fishy with that deeper belly than the traditional Whopper Plopper just looking like a cigar. But then you step down to the 90 and all of a sudden you get that old profile where it catches grass really easy and it has a really quiet, subtle action to it. I don't know if it's the size of the tail or what, but it's super quiet, okay? Then you step down to the 75 from the 90 and you get a couple of things. It weighs about the same, but it's a shorter bait and it's a more effective bait. It's a louder bait. Part of it is that it's got that deeper profile to it. So look at how much deeper the belly is on the 75 than it is on the 90. But then, as I was just mentioning, take a look at these tails. Ow. So the tail on the 90 is just this little biatch of a tail. And the tail on the 75 is much larger. I never quite realized that, but golly, the tail is probably twice the size on the 75 as it is on the 90. That's crazy. And then as you step down to the 60, which in my opinion is too small, at least so far. Let's see the size of the tail of the 60 versus the 90. It's even smaller than the 90, but not by a lot. They both have really small tails. So you get that quieter, more subtle action. Oh, actually hooked myself there. That did not feel good at all. But the Whopper Plopper conversation is an interesting one, for sure. Those Monster Bass Patriots are great too. That's a walking bait, right? I haven't really tried many Monster Bass baits at this point. I got their popper, but kind of on accident. I signed up for their box 1 month when I got it for $5 or $10, and in it they threw a popper, but I don't think I've even used it. But the Patriot looks cool. I mean, they've got some cool paint jobs and stuff. And I'm not going to hate on Monster Bass because I generally think for a subscription service that they're doing good stuff. But of course, they fall into the same trap that they accuse everybody else of doing. Some months are better than others, right? It's part of the deal. In order to get good margins, you have to sign on smaller companies, get better deals, and wheel and deal a little bit. You're not just only going to get big brand name stuff every single month and put the best baits in the box every single month. That's just not realistic. Um, and you do have to like ride this line of providing value to customers uh, that unfortunately a lot of customers actually want numbers of baits more than they want quality of baits. So they're looking at how many baits are in the box. And so if you only put 4 things in the box, but they were all super high quality, $10 to $15 baits, $7 to $10 baits, yeah, customers would be less happy than if they were getting 7 or 8 $4 to $6 baits. So in comes the dilemma and the reason that Monster Bass and Catchco, all these other companies are creating boxes that when they're throwing in higher higher end baits or more refined baits, that they're going to lesser known companies and finding a way to cut corners on grabbing a crankbait that costs $7 instead of one that costs $15. Finding a bladed jig that is middle of the road as opposed to super high end. Now Monster Bass has put the Thunder Cricket in their box multiple times. They've done some really cool stuff multiple times, but then they've also probably just as frequently put no name stuff or borderline crappy stuff that maybe they didn't do their due diligence on, and that it's unfortunate to see, but it's part of how the game works. So I don't dog on them for that at all. Uh, I think they're working on it, and I think they're generally doing a good job. Daniel says, could you use like skirt tie wire or line behind the clear tube part on the 90 and make the tube close up the gap so it wouldn't catch grass as bad? Unfortunately, no, because what it'll do is prevent the bait from spinning freely. So originally, they thought that gap was going to be the best design because it allows the tail to spin as freely as possible. And then over time, they realized that creating that that joint, if you will, to where it's concave on the tail part that goes into the body and it actually inserts in like so, it still spins freely inside the tail. So let me see if I can show you. So there's that 90, right? You see that big old gap. Tail spins freely. That's cool. But then you see on the 75, you don't see that big old gap. Tail spins freely. So here's what they did is that they kind of tapered the material inside the tail and made it shaped so that it fits into the body and will close that gap naturally. And then even when the gap is fully closed, it spins freely. If you close this gap, it's going to pinch these together shut, and that tail is going to stop spinning as freely, just like what happens when you fish this over a piece of grass, and grass gets caught in there, and all of a sudden, before you know it, this entire bait is spinning instead of the tail, and you're getting a remarkable amount of line twist. And that is really the huge problem with the design of the 130 and the 90, in my opinion. It's a big reason that I like the 110 and the 75, in addition to the tail size and the sound that it puts out, that deeper belly, the profile. It's all just better in my opinion. But I would not try to manually fix that gap. I think it's just a design flaw, and I think you would run into issues in trying to fix it. That's just me, though. Is that kind of all topwater categories, or what did I miss, guys? I'm sure I probably missed something. I was going to get into talking about crankbaits and, finesse baits, multi-species, jerk baits, rattle traps, crankbaits, chatterbaits, downsized square bills, kind of talk about everything. But we didn't quite get there tonight, and I'm not going to stay on for another hour. It's 11:45 my time. Been on for almost 2.5 hours here. Matt says, didn't you get one of those Teckle Goodpecker top water baits? I did not. Nope. Only got the Kick Knocker and the Kick Knocker pups. No Goodpeckers. I mean, I have a Goodpecker, but I do not have any of the Teckle Goodpeckers. Sorry for the bad dad joke and for being a pervert, but no, dude, I don't have that bait. It seems interesting, and I wonder if you could you doctor a bait to have that type of action? Is it essentially just that the middle treble is like a blade instead? I mean, could you do that so that when you're walking the bait, that blade is swinging and hitting the bait? I mean, it does concern me a little bit about the durability of the bait itself, the paint job, everything like that, and what the bait is made of, and whether it would hold up to all of that abuse of the blade whacking on the bait. I don't know. You said I wouldn't get it. I got one, and you could modify the original Kick Knocker, just use a big Colorado blade. That's what I was thinking, dude. Okay, so it is like the size of a standard Kick Knocker. Now, what makes it unique, and why wouldn't you just potentially do that to any old walking bait, right? Say take the Dog X Diamante. Why not throw one on there? Just any old walking bait. Or would it work on pretty much all walking baits? Should just throw a Colorado blade or an Indiana blade on the middle treble hook. That way you've still got the front and the back, and then you've got a blade in the middle. Isn't that essentially what the design is? I haven't looked into it really, but it's an interesting concept, but it seems like one that you could do on your own. So, see, the blade on it is shaped like a spade, and it does make a good sound. Just haven't caught anything on it. Also, my Nori's Fuka bait, which is a bigger version and jointed. So, then is the shape more like what you get out of this guy with the Nishini? Like, what if I used this smaller blade from the Abino? Like, how different is it from that guy? And is it essentially just like a play off of this concept? Obviously, without the spinners on it. I mean, this is a straight retrieve bait. I get that the Goodpecker is a walking bait, but is it kind of a play off of that same concept? Makes me interested. Yeah, it's like maybe I could or should just take one of these two blades. Maybe take this smaller blade and put it on, a smaller walking bait. Throw it on something like the Kick Knocker Pup and see how that thing acts. We'll see. Man, I do need to try this bad boy out pretty soon. As the water's heating up. Although water has really cleared up in my area, even though we've had wind, we have not had a lot of rainstorms. The water is clearing up, and so it's tough. I think on really windy days though, something like this Cat 3 spinner blade type of deal could be an awesome little modification to make. The way that it spins in the water, you can just peg it to your line in front of any old lure. Do need to give that a shot sooner than later. All right, guys, 2 hours, 33 minutes. I'm going to dip out of here. Tomorrow night, though, I'm going to be on, and our very own Matthew Acevedo, South Jersey fisherman, 028, who's in the chat right now, is going to join me and do a little unboxing for us. So while we're at it, we'll make sure that everybody is over there subscribed to Matt. Not that there's very many of you guys in here in the first place, and I'm sure half of you guys are already subscribed to him, but let's plan on that. We will be back on tomorrow night, probably about the same time. Call it 9 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, 11 p.m. Eastern, and that will be the plan. Matt will join us. We'll do a little double live stream. Matt will show us some new baits, JDM stuff that he picked up from the hookup tackle, and then we'll talk about just a little wide variety of stuff. So anything else that you guys want to talk about tomorrow, bring it on, especially JDM stuff. Think about it ahead of time, and we'll plan on seeing you then. So thank you guys so much for chilling. If you haven't already, hit the thumbs up button. 15 people in here. I don't know how more people are joining as I'm saying goodbye, but thanks for the support, guys. Subscribe, turn on your notifications so you don't not see it when I go live tomorrow at 9 p.m. my time, 11 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. Be ready for it, all right? Don't expect your notifications to pop up right away. So look out for it. I'll see you guys then, okay? Appreciate your support. Peace. 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 Peace.